we are Samantha Levaros,
Jesse Jordan.
and on this podcast, you can follow us on our entrepreneurial journey to our first successful business.
Or our first failed one. We're not really sure about that one yet. So if you want to find out about where our journey goes, make sure to also subscribe to our YouTube channel. So with that out of the way, do we want to take a look at what we were up to in the last couple of weeks? How does our check-in look like?
Yeah, for sure. How have you been doing, Jesse?
It's going great. Really like how you also just bounce the question back to me. So I actually have to start off talking about the main topics. I appreciate it. Yeah, but I can do it.
No,
So
no. Okay, let me start this week. You're right. I should start. So, one of my updates is I was responsible for editing the last podcast episode, and here we are with no podcast release. So, um, well, yeah, mentally fighting with that one, but we will. I think the upside is that we will have two episodes released on 1 week, which I think is a success, right?
it is. Just double content for this week then, for
Yeah.
everyone, right? So this is also something to look forward to. But I would like to kind of circle back on this. So what do you mean? It's a fight to kind of do this editing. I don't understand. I remember when I did the editing, it was so fun. I really enjoyed just listening to my voice over and over again. So I'm not really sure what you mean. It's like a fight, when you talk about this, a struggle. Not sure which word you used.
Well, yeah, I think finding the time, but also finding the time is usually hard when you are avoiding doing a task. And I think because I started listening to it, and your voice sounded great, and I sounded awful, and then I realized, you know, the speech patterns that I don't like, that I know I have. I usually end sentences in almost a silent, downloading the volume to a point where you cannot hear the last word I say. And that was very evident on the recording. And I started, okay, I'm going to increase the volume of this one word. And then I spent 30 minutes editing less than 10 seconds of audio. And then I was like,
Right.
okay. Oh, the other thing, I say and then a lot. And I started removing them
Oh,
from
for real?
yes, at least a few. So, a task that should have taken perhaps 1 hour took several 30-minute encounters, and then I haven't found the time to finish it. No, but I will finish it. I will finish it. I think the good thing is at some point we will get over, this dislike of our own voice. You'll just stop hearing it, and it will become an abstract thing. I hope.
I mean, I hope so, right? Because
Yeah.
this is literally the experience that I also have. If I listen to this recording of our podcast episodes, and I will also have to do the recording of this episode we're recording just now.
Yeah.
Then I also realized how beautifully peaceful your voice sounds and how nice it is to listen to you. But every time I have to listen to myself, I'm dying a little bit more inside, right? So I feel maybe this is just the universal experience of listening to your
Yeah.
voice, and this is something that you literally cannot really train away. It's just maybe something you just have to learn to live with, right? This is,
Yeah.
I think, my working hypothesis for now.
I agree, because when I listened to our recording, I heard your very clear and thoughtful voice, and it sounded like a professional podcaster. And I don't know if I had a cold or something, but my voice was weird, and just, I don't know, it's just weird. I cannot not explain it, but it didn't sound as professional as yours, or as inviting to listen to. But yeah, I would say it's a universal experience. And then it's just funny how we tend to center on our own defects so much, to the point where it just become a little bit self-centered. I guess. It's why?
100%.
It's just, yeah. Think of it as if it
100%.
were another person. I guess. I hope.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I will try. I will try today when I
Let me
kind of
know
like
how
get
it
into the
goes.
recording. Exactly.
But
If I
yeah,
can imagine myself as like this other person that's called Jesse Jordan, and it's actually not me, just
no,
like
it's not
another
you.
professional podcaster, and then it's gonna be
Exactly.
fine. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, it will. It will. You'll see.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the tip.
But okay, what else have we done in this? I don't even know how many weeks it has been from one episode to the next, thanks to my procrastination. But I think we we had
Yes.
time. We had time to do other things to explore a little bit of this business creation things and ideas. So to start, I don't think we have shared one of the ideas we had, and I think it might be easier to just say what it is. Not that many people are listening to this, so I think it's safe or fine to just, say what we were trying to create. But yeah, I think over the past few weeks, we basically played around with a few ideas, some maybe more abstract, some more concrete, and then how to go about them. And well, one is this podcast, basically. Um, so we were thinking of creating socials around it and creating like content that can help people that are in the same place as we are. So yeah, I think that's one of the updates we have. We basically started trying to define an audience for our content. And did we create? Oh, we did create socials. I think we had said that before. And then we started listing possible ideas. So why do we define an audience, Jesse? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm actually not like a marketing guru myself, but I think the main reason is probably that we want to make sure that we actually reach the right people with any kind of like services, ads, announcement, or whatsoever, so we don't waste a lot of like time and money talking like to the wrong people, first of all. And I think like with us like refining the audience also becomes like much better to easier to refine the product itself, right? Because if you don't kind of like target the entire market but just like a small sub portion of it, it should become easier to actually create like something that is in high demand for a certain target group. And so I think in this regard we were looking into trying to defining an audience, for example, this decaf business idea.
Mhm. Yeah, I think also when it comes to creating content, not that I have that much experience, but sometimes it's hard to decide what to create. Um, and having like a target, like the type of person you're trying to talk to, kind of helps focus the efforts a little bit. So you don't just end up, the entire day be like, oh, what do I write? What do I say? Or having sometimes you have too many ideas, which might not be my case right now. But I think it helps basically that just focus on what you want to do first, and yeah, whether it's worth it or not. So yeah, that's one of the things we did for the podcast. Do you want to tell us more about the decaf business idea?
Sure. I'm not even sure if, like, in the last podcast episode, we already talked in more detail about what this business idea is about. But essentially, we were thinking about having a coffee shop store line or an online retail service where you can specifically buy a specialty decaf coffee, right? So currently, there's already a very big market around specialty coffee. I think like any kind of like major or minor city has a couple of like specialty coffee places, or sometimes even like franchises that are very specialized on specialty coffee. I can, for example, think of like a franchise that's very popular in Berlin, for example. It's called like the Barn. So
Mhm.
these are like actual kind of like chains, just like specifically targeted to this audience that wants to enjoy specialty coffee. So more interestingly roasted coffee beans than the standard Italian roast coffee that you can, for example, buy at the supermarket. And we were thinking it would be really nice if there was also an alternative decaffeinated offering for specialty coffees. Because nowadays, if you do want to drink like some decaf specialty coffee, in some places, even like specialty coffee, specialized cafes, you may not be able to actually get this. And we were thinking, or mostly actually Samantha came up with this idea, that it would be
Yeah.
good to actually try to find like a market niche around that. So we are discussing this quite a time, and then we also realized that this trend is starting to pick up. Like a lot of like people, also like on social media, are starting like their own kind of like experimentation with either new specialty coffee roasts that are decaffeinated, or also talking more about like decaffeinated specialty coffee. And we were thinking, okay, maybe now is a good time for us to also find out a little bit like what the market looks like, what kind of audiences we could target, right? And still kind of like stay competitive, and also to understand a little bit better what the logistics of actually running a coffee place and also having an online retail service would look like if we want to do the specialty coffee product that is like decaffeinated. So in this vein, right now what we want to focus on is really trying to understand the market better, trying to understand the audience better, and also trying to build a couple of like maybe sub services or sub products before we get to the actual end product, and also like deciding maybe in the interim if we want to still do this, actually have a coffee shop or actually have like an online coffee store where you can buy like decaffeinated, especially coffee roasts. And in this interim, we want to focus on creating social media content. Maybe also have like a website where you can learn about like decaffeinated specialty coffee, or maybe also find like coffee places like in your area. We still kind of like figuring this out, like what this website could offer. But we hope that in this vein we can actually get like more knowledge and like insight to really understand what the investment's gonna look like if we want to actually go down the route of having a proper specialty decaf store, for example. Does this kind of like sound like what we have been doing the last couple of weeks? What do you think, Samantha?
Yeah. I think that's a very, very thorough summary. That's the word. I couldn't think of an English word, so, but yeah, a summary of what we have been doing. So I think anyone listening could tell that we have, it's not like one idea, it's kind of one of the issues right now. I don't know if it is an issue, but it's not clear exactly what we want to build. There are many shapes this could take. It basically came from the experience of there, even though there are specialty roasters that offer a decaf alternative, usually you cannot get it at the coffee shop, at least not in espresso form. And I think
Mm.
that comes from them having like one big espresso machine that all usually can only do um, one type of coffee, or they set it up in a way that they only do one of the origins per day, because my understanding, even though I don't know much, is that setting up the machine every day takes, and calibrating and everything takes a little bit of time. So their main offering is not decaf. Their main audience is not people that want to have decaf. So usually you don't have that same experience when you don't drink coffee, where you can just go to a specialty coffee shop. And I don't know, I love going to those shops. I know you do as well, Jesse. And and yeah, it's kind of hard when you're trying to reduce caffeine, or you cannot have it, to have the same experience, or you can only have one type of coffee, or they only offer one origin instead of several. So yeah, basically we could build a coffee shop that only sells decaf, or you could have our own roastery with different origins, or we could have just a storefront selling other brands. There are many shapes this can take, um, and yeah, basically figuring out which one makes sense. If it makes sense, it's also a job in itself. And I think the content creation that we also talked is a way to research a bit more about the market and the audience, and trying to figure out if it really makes sense. And I think I just basically repeated everything you said, but I'm sorry
No,
for
no, like you
anyone
also made like a good points around like
listening.
what the different business models could actually look like in more detail, right? Because I'm for example not as familiar with that yet as you are, right? So this is like also like super helpful, I think, like to know for the listener as well. Mm. And
Yeah.
also one question I was wondering about, I think this may be the most burning question that everyone has as well, like listening to this. It's just like how was it like for us like find a name like for our socials and like how this brand could
Oh
be
my
named
gosh.
after.
The naming, I think is for the hardest part. No, I'm just joking. I don't know if it's the hardest part, but I imagine how many businesses didn't happen because people got stuck on, on the name. And
For
then
real.
5 years later, they were just like, what is a good name? But I think we got lucky because you suggested one name that was pretty fun, at least for me, which was like a wordplay with decaf and cappuccino, and you said decafuccino, and then I misspelled it, and I was like, okay, Instagram. There's no Instagram with that one, and then like I got all excited, so I googled the proper spelling and realized I was spelling it wrong, and the word cappuccino properly spelled already has an Instagram account. And then, well, I think that's also a learning that sometimes you have ideas that are not really new ideas. Or other people have had similar ideas. So this was someone that I think was pregnant and wasn't having caffeine at the time, and she created a profile basically exploring the decaf
Mm.
brands. But she hasn't posted in a while, so it's not so active. But then we have, that obstacle of what do we do? Do we use the same name? Do we reach out and try to get the profile? We are not making money. I think it's also something I didn't know in the past before working for a startup that did it was that people actually pay for these domain names or account names. Like sometimes you're starting a business and let's say you already have money to invest and you come into the obstacle and you just go like, you have a profile that's not very active. I have 10K or I don't know how much people pay for it, but you basically buy it. And that's not our situation. We cannot just go and offer money to buy. So our alternatives is just looking for a new name. And then we started word playing, but no name was as good as the cappuccino. And well, and we opted for the German spelling of decaf, kind of. Well, it's not the same one, but coffee or cafe in German is with a K instead of a C. So we now have the cappuccino with a K. And we'll see if it takes off.
Exactly, yeah. Mm. So, yeah, I'm not sure like if by the time of like the release of the podcast recording, we already have a lot of like stuff on there. But if we do, we can also leave like a link in the description of the video below if you're listening to this on YouTube.
But
But I
yeah,
think this.
so yeah. No, go
Sorry,
ahead. Sorry.
so oh, no worries. Yeah, so I think this is mostly it like for what we did with regards to the decaf business idea, how we want to move forward with that. But I think there's also like a couple of other things that we looked into. For example, we also think about like creating courses, right? Like how do we actually get to this idea to create courses? Do you remember?
I think, well, several ways. I think a few Instagram, well, accounts I follow, basically, that's how they have several um, income streams, let's say, but I think the one that works the most for them is a course, a digital course. And I think we also we're following this Twitter account that is doing a workshop on how to create basically digital courses. And yeah, I think it's pretty common nowadays. Some people building a separate income stream using their skill sets to create a small or large digital course that they can offer their audience. and it's something that you have to spend a lot of time creating at first, but then at some point it just runs on its own. And we basically did a little bit of brainstorm, taking our background and skills and trying to think of courses that we could build or offer. Um, I wouldn't say it's anything new, uh, especially for software engineers. There are a lot of courses out there built by software
Mm-hmm.
engineers. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the obstacle there, at least for me, is that I don't necessarily would like to teach other software engineers how to build stuff. It doesn't sound fun to me. Not that it's anything bad. So the idea is, how do we take the knowledge we already have and try to create something with it that also we find enjoyable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the idea is having a side hustle that is not enjoyable. Um, yeah, it's not at least what I would like to do.
Yeah, it just sounds
Spend my
like
freedom
more
in
work.
trading. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So, any more updates on that front from your side, Jesse?
Yeah, I think you already summarized this perfectly. And I think, yeah, with the course creation, yeah, like brainstorming on this, but maybe in the future we can kind of like circle back on this and see what else we can do there. So it's like so interesting, like using this. What was this just now? Like this corporate kind of like language, kind of like let's circle back on this. Like where was this coming from? What I said, right? Like it's like I'm not sure what it
Yeah.
is. Maybe it's like this whole podcast setup. I feel like, oh, I have to get like into corporate mode and here we go. Let's circle back on
I
this. Let's touch base maybe like next week or something like this, right? But
yeah.
this is what we're gonna do about the course creation, right? So yeah,
I think our status update turned into a status update that became a little bit
right.
like
It
a
feels like
work
it, right?
work
Feels
mode.
feels like a proper
Like
day job already.
we're so traumatized by our job, so we don't know how to get out
Apparently,
of the status update.
exactly. I cannot get out of this mode anymore. It's almost like
No.
a automatic response, like directly from my
Yeah.
spine. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, this is funny because we spent like 20 minutes giving our status update. But we actually had a topic for this episode that is something
Right.
you looked a lot into. And it
I
also
did.
goes back to our decaf business idea.
Right.
Before we kind of went the route of let's do content first. I think we started talking about, how do you validate a business idea?
Hmm.
Or how do you start figuring out if it's something worth building? And you did some research on that, Jesse. So
I
do you want
did.
to tell us more?
Yeah, yeah, sure, yeah. Which is like a really good idea, right? Like, how do you actually validate like a business and actually know that this is something worth pursuing? I'm, for example, have been working like as a software engineer all my life and never built like a business before. So to me, this feels like a very loaded question, and this is also why
Mm,
I felt like very compelled to do like a lot of research early on, so I better understand what this is actually about. I think you already read more about this like before, right? But for me, this was like more like a new thing to read up on. And yeah, what I figured out is there's like a lot of different ways to validate a business idea, and one of them that I looked further into is the so-called hypothesis testing. And now I also remember. I think like last time we tried to record this, like you were even saying, like maybe you should practice kind of like pronouncing the word hypothesis, right? Just I realized as well.
yeah,
Hypothesis, such an interesting word, so many s's and th's in there, right? Like
yeah,
if anyone like if you, dear listener, are like English proficient, maybe you're even teaching like English, right? Please leave a comment below this video, like how we did on this hypothesis testing pronunciation. Thank you very much. Um,
yeah.
but basically, this kind of concept also tries to, similar to other business validation methods, to reduce the risk of investing too much time and effort and money into a business idea or an venture that actually doesn't turn out to be profitable, right? So,
Hmm.
in the end, you actually want to have like a business that only not only offers like a product like to people, that is worth kind of like buying for them, but also where you get enough return out of it that the business can actually run on its own, and also hopefully is profitable, actually kind of like returns more money than you put into. And hypothesis testing is a more detailed method to actually find out if the core assumptions of the business that you try to build are correct, right? So
Yeah.
to
So
for example, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, just to bring it down a little bit, I was going to ask like what are our hypotheses in the decaf business idea, or which is not really a concrete idea, but I think one of the hypotheses was that people actually want to drink specialty decaf and are not finding it.
Exactly, exactly, which is like an important core hypothesis, right? Because
Mhm.
right now the market is still kind of like fairly thin, and because there is still so little offering for this, the question arises: is this even like a proper market? Are people actually kind of like interested in buying this, right? And to try to mm, clear up this uncertainty, what we can do is actually do this testing of the hypothesis. People actually want to drink decaf coffee and have like a need for it, and then hopefully we have like a more clear answer before we move forward to actually try to implement something for the potential users. Yeah, fully agree with you on this one. Um, yeah, what else can we say about like hypothesis testing?
How
Yeah,
do you,
essentially.
yeah,
Go ahead.
go on. I interrupt you again. Oh my God, you're
No
going to have
worries.
to edit this one out.
No, no, all good. Yeah, yeah. It's like obviously we're sitting like on two different continents, and I think like actually it's probably like on my end, like I'm in Europe, and as everyone knows, internet in Europe outside of Switzerland at least is like always terrible. So this is why every time we're like here in this recording, like I always hear like Samantha like 3 seconds later, and so sometimes we have this thing where I say something
Yeah,
and then and she's like, "Oh, sorry," and I'm
the
like, "Oh, sorry,
delay.
go ahead." So exactly.
Very skilled.
Um, yeah,
How do you
essentially,
go about? Oh, not again. Now you talk.
okay,
You go.
yeah, but essentially, but essentially, yeah, they're just like a couple of like core components of hypothesis testing. First of all, you write down your hypothesis, right? So, for example, people want to drink decaf coffee, or another hypothesis that we have. There are people out there who cannot tolerate caffeinated beverages, and this is why they want to drink decaf coffee. Or we have like a hypothesis like it's feasible, like maybe in the future still to actually offer coffee, even though coffee maybe gets more expensive due to things like climate change, right? Like a lot of like different questions you can ask yourself there. And then it's like important first of all to group all of these questions into different categories. And the four main categories for hypothesis testing are desirability, viability, feasibility, and adaptability. Um, and maybe, yeah, I don't know, maybe we can go into like a little bit more what this actually means.
Hmm.
So
Yes,
first of
please.
all, yeah, sure. So first of all, we have the feasibility, which is basically the question that you would ask yourself when you start something new around can we actually do this thing? So, for example, you want to build like a B2B software as a service product, then you might ask yourself, do I actually have the team to build this new product? Do I have the engineers to build this product? Do I know how to build this product? All of these questions on the how to, this is what actually falls in the category of feasibility. And in our case, for example, as well, there are a couple of questions that might come to mind. For example, how does it even work to set up a shop, right? Do we have the knowledge on how to either roast our own beans, or do we even know people or who we should contact to roast the beans like for us if we want to do the shop route
Yeah.
of like this service or this idea?
Or or can you even decaf different origins? Because I think one of the things we saw was that a lot of the decaf specialty offerings out there is from Colombia, and you didn't find many different origins. So for us, without having really the knowledge on how the decafing process decaffeination process happens, we don't really know if you can have different origins of decaf coffee. So let's say I don't know if you can have a Kenya coffee and just run the same process. Like, why is it not done already? Is it a problem with the beans? Is it an issue with um, the location, or perhaps the investment is too large? So there are a lot of questions, yeah, around this topic, basically of can we both do it, or can it even be done in the way we want to? So yeah.
100%, yeah, and also like a very good point, right? That you even have to find out, is it possible to create this product, right, that we have, and how do we actually find out about this? Yeah, so this is like a very, very important addition, like for this decaf idea as well. And something that I also found out about like feasibility is that oftentimes this is something that founders, and I saw this especially like working like in tech as well, sometimes explore like too early, like even before actually finding out is this a product that people want, right? Or even finding out is this gonna be profitable? Just like finding out, do we have the tech stack to do this, right? Like see this so
Hmm.
many times, like in maybe the IT startup world or something like this, and here as well, like the important point is feasibility is super important to actually do the hypothesis testing with and try to understand the risk of the business idea. But it's also so important to understand it's not the main thing one should focus on early on. Actually, much more important is desirability, profitability, so basic like viability. How does this actually look like? And also with regards to desirability, maybe we can look into this one as well. This is basically just the question: is there like an actual market demand for this? Are there people who are willing to pay for this product that we're trying to offer? And here it's also important, what I learned at least, to understand what an actual real signal is for demand, right? Or what's an actual signal for this is a desired product, because there are some kind of like signals you could get like from testing. So let's imagine, for example, um, you create like a new trading card game, right? Like
Hmm.
super cute trading card game with, I don't know, cute kittens on it, right? Like different colored kittens, and they have like special abilities or something like this, right? And you want to build this game, and you know that your friend circle, they're actually very into trading card games. So you're thinking, oh, this is like the perfect kind of like thing for me to actually have like this first user base to maybe kind of like build this first edition or version of this product out, and then hopefully expand like my user base like from this, like from my friend circle who are actively playing trading card games, right? So you're like, this is perfect, I already know essentially that there's like demand, but hey, I'm actually gonna do the hypothesis testing just to make sure that this is actually happening. So maybe what you might want to do is kind of like go around, go to your friends, and maybe next time you see them, like a board game night or something like this, you kind of like say, hey, by the way, like I have a couple of sketches here, and I want to create this really cool trading card game. There's super cute kittens on there, right? And your friends might be super excited. They're like, oh wow, this looks amazing! I cannot believe this, and maybe even tell them, oh, by the way, it's gonna cost like $12 a deck, right? So if you want to pay, kind of like get one deck, it costs like $12, and they're like, oh, this is great, like this is like so inexpensive. Totally would buy this game. It's so amazing. If I only look at the sketches, it would be an instant buy, right?
Hmm.
So if you have this situation, you might go home and actually start kind of like building out this game, kind of like printing it, maybe even like putting like a lot of money into it to not only create like enough for your friend circle, but maybe even more, because you already now have this assumption. Oh, my hypothesis that there's like an actual market demand is actually verified, right? There are actually people who are willing to kind of like pay for this. But then what might happen is you kind of like go back like next time when the board game night kind of like comes around with your trading card game, and you kind of like tell your friends, hey, by the way, I have like a shoebox full of like these card decks, so everyone's gonna buy, right? And then
Yeah, of
maybe they're
course.
like, I don't know, maybe you can imagine how the story could go out, right? Maybe one alternative timeline of this. And
Yeah. So you're saying just because I want to have specialty African decaf. Oh my gosh, I cannot say the word decaf coffee. Doesn't mean everyone will want to have the same thing and actually pay for it.
right,
You need a better testing that you and your friends want to. And even if your friends express interest until you actually see the money, you
Yes,
should doubt. You should doubt.
100%. Yes. And I think this is a very important distinction about like people can say a lot of like things, but it doesn't necessarily mean this is a signal that people are actually gonna buy, right? So I think this is also gonna be interesting. I think when we build like further on our specialty decaf idea to really find out how can we actually test this hypothesis in a way that we actually know people are gonna buy, not just gonna say, oh, this is interesting, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not sure yet how we do it, right? But just like maybe some thought to kind of keep in mind. Mm. And I think that's also mostly it for like desirability as a core component. And then we have like two more. One of them is called viability. So this is around the question: can we make this product or like this business around this product profitable, right? Because it can be interesting to build something really cool that people can use like for very little money, for example, maybe like a very small subscription fee, but if you realize that maybe the fee that you're charging or the amount of customers that you're getting don't generate enough revenue to actually cover your server costs, if it's, for example, a digital product, then it actually turns out that this business is not profitable. So the product can be great, can be super helpful and useful for people. People might actually use it, really enjoy it, but if at the end of the day you cannot actually cover your costs and kind of like also make like a surplus of it, it is actually not a viable business, and this is something also that you have to consider in your risk calculation. This is also like seem helpful, right? To kind of like check for this.
I would say so. I think
Mm.
especially if you're trying to go the route we're trying to go of not really depending on investments as much as we can, then yeah, you really need to make sure that your revenue covers your costs.
100%, 100%. Bootstrapping all the way. And then last but not least, we have our adaptability component. And this is basically the question around is our business also like in the long term actually kind of like stable enough to sustain itself, right? So if, for example, some circumstances change, for example, like market conditions kind of like turn worse, or maybe some core component or ingredient of our product maybe kind of like becomes like more expensive or harder to get, or if, for example, like a vendor we are kind of like working together with, they kind of like go bankrupt, is there like a way for us to still sustain this business, and if so, how can we actually achieve that, right? It could maybe also just like mean testing this kind of like component that actually there are kind of like pitfalls to this, and maybe there's something that could really risk the sustainability of this business. But then the question is also, can we find like ways to work around like this risk? And this is like all kinds of questions we could probably also ask ourselves there with the specialty decaf business idea that we have right now. What do you think?
Yeah. So um, from the four main components, would you say desirability is the first one we should start with?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's probably the most important to at least like give us a signal that this is in general worth pursuing. And then I think like after that, it's like maybe more interesting to look at like viability, feasibility, and then also adaptability. Or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, hearing your explanation, I think that's the one that makes the most sense. Feasibility, I would guess, I would say it depends on the business you're trying to create. I think in our case, in the decaf idea, it's not something that's entirely new. So we already know that some decaf brands exist. So that's perhaps not such a risky component. But maybe if you were trying to create something that the tech is not there for or that you haven't seen done before, then maybe that one it's also as important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
also like a very good point. Exactly. That's not like a completely utopian novel kind of like business idea, right? Want to have like a coffee shop. It's more like okay, like how do the details around like the other factors actually look like before we look too much into feasibility and fully agree on this one.
So
Yeah,
what are the next steps?
yeah, I think the next steps are, at least like for hypothesis testing, is to maybe look through our list of hypotheses we already have like set up. There are a couple on them, for example, with regards like to desirability. Do we even find any customers, or are there customers who cannot always drink regular coffee, even if they'd like to? Or for viability, customers actually willing to buy decaf specialty coffee like at a cafe, right? Is this like actually like a proper use case? Or for adaptability, we can actually collaborate with different vendors or different roasters if we, for example, go in this direction of like working up with third parties, and we can kind of like live with the failure of one of like these providers within the supply chain, because we still have supply from other ones. All of these questions I think we could maybe start testing on, maybe like with content, with surveys, with maybe different other means, and maybe also starting, as you already said, with the desirability component here, to really see is there actually like customer demand for this. And I think once we have like more answers to this one, we can maybe start, maybe start like refining like the content idea, the audience. Maybe already start like building the website and understanding what should be on there, right? Like what kind of like functionalities people would like to see on this platform. And I think that's like what comes to mind for me so far, like for the next steps. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think doing little experiments around those points, either through social media with content, trying to find um, if there's even people that want to have access to decaf specialty coffee, um, is next thing we should do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fully agree on this one. Awesome. And I think is this everything for us today? Like, is there anything else we have like forgotten to talk about? I see you nodding, so maybe it is, right? So
Yeah, I think that's everything for us today. I think the only other update is that we have our website for this podcast where every episode is going to be uploaded, and probably a way to reach out to us, or eventually some more information and content related to business creation. But yeah, and that business is, oh, sorry, that website is arewebuildingthis.com, or the alternative. That was a mistake I made when purchasing the domains, was is arewebuildthis.com. So depending on how much you want to write, you can go to both places and find a list of the podcast episodes. Um, so yeah, thank you for listening.
exactly. Thank you so much, and then have a great day. Bye bye.
Bye.